All children are not the same. They do not learn the same. They cannot, just because I can pass something today doesn't mean that I will pass it always.
I just wanna spread
Some
love
days
and
we
light.
have
Now is the
moments
time to
where
stop playing it
I
life
need to
and figure you
regroup
out a
and
little.
or
See, you got a
relearn
ride here
something
to
and come
encourage
back.
and wanna see
And
you
so school
survive.
puts a lot of
You deserve to
pressure
be
on
happy, ain't no
students
mistaking.
to
It might take
be
a little time and
perfect,
determination, no delaying. Right now
and
is the time.
no
Thank
one
you
is
for
perfect.
tuning in. Stop playing in life. Let's go. Hey, stop playing in life. I wanna see you happy. Right now's the time. Let's go. Hey.
Hello, peeps. It's Melissa with Stop Playing in Life, and we're speaking with Roxanne Leroy, who owns a private online homeschool, tutoring, and consulting business. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So, if everybody doesn't know, Roxanne is actually my sister.
I am. Oh my goodness.
So, Roxanne, tell us about you and how long you've been working in the education industry.
So, I am in my early 30s, and I have been teaching in education for about 12 years. Some of it was public sector, and then some other pieces was homeschool. And so I found out that I really enjoy homeschool and teaching one on one or in smaller settings than in the public school system.
So, when you was deciding to start a business, is that the reason why you decided to do education instead of delving into another field?
Yes, my biggest thing is to help children. So I've always felt like teaching was my calling. It was something that I love to do. I love to see how they can expand their minds to try new things or be successful in new things. It's the same way with having to keep trying over and over, like the little engine that could, right? So sometimes we don't get it right away, but we need those people in our lives to help us. And so that's the reason why I wanted to stick with an educational business.
What style of homeschooling do you provide?
I provide multiple. So it's not necessarily like full time. Like most people think homeschool or someone that helps you homeschool will take on your kids the entire day. So what I usually do is I help in the areas that they feel like they aren't able to do on their own. And so they could do like 1 hour with me, they could do at the max 4 hours with me and within a week. But it's particularly for me to give the kids the concepts and teach them the direct instruction that they need to know.
Does your program have multiple scheduling options? So if your clients can easily fit it into their schedules?
Yeah, so majority of the time, my clients will let me know what days work best for them, and then I kind of look into my schedule to see what would fit, and then we look for time slots as according to that. I like to do one-on-one, but if there's an opportunity for me to work with 2 to 4 students, then that's perfect because that gives kids the opportunity to just take all of everything that they're learning and like have conversations with those that they could that's on their level. So majority of the time whenever we're learning with a teacher and a student, they have this way of thinking like, oh, the teacher, she knows everything or they know everything. There's nothing that I can enlighten them with, which is not true. Children are very smart and they catch on and make inferences better than most adults because our brains are sort of set in our ways. And so when they have the opportunity to go to talk with other students about the same things, they give different perspectives because of their background knowledge. And I actually really like when I'm able to do that also.
It sounds interesting. Because I know you've told me before about like with Emma, my daughter's Emma. She does your homeschool program, but you always want me to put her in different like dance and swimming with other peers.
Yes, so that's very important because she's, well, one, because she'll be able to take those situations that she's in throughout the day and use those in her academic language. So when we're talking about letters and numbers with Emma, because she's in pre-K, so we're talking about letters and numbers and seeing those letters and numbers when she goes to swimming and they start talking about, okay, we're going to do one thing. She knows what one is. You know, she can be able to count and she can be able to do that. And then she can tell her friends, like, okay, well, in class, when I was with such and such, I was able to do, I want her to be able to bring back those experiences because when you're in public school, it's no way you're not going swimming and talking about swimming, or you do go swimming, but it's not something that's your day to day. It's something that you probably did in the summer and you only talk about it in the summer or at springtime versus like these experiences that happen on a day to day basis. So even when she goes to dance class, again, when we're talking about corners and math, she's able to understand that, okay, when I'm looking forward and then I'm supposed to go to this corner. She knows what a point is. That's math, because we talk about those things when we're looking at shapes. And so it relates back to dance. It's just so many ways for kids to be to learn across different genres of things. And when I say different genres, I'm not just meaning math, science, social studies. I'm meaning like their activities. Like, for instance, Emma's, her biggest thing is imaginatory play, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those dolls, having those conversations, because in pre-K, they have to learn how to communicate with each other. And so her being able to use the dolls to talk out scenarios of things that she didn't understand when she went and played with others. Then as the adult, you can say, okay, well, I'm not sure if I like this. And then you can give her a task to think differently about the situation. So it's all kind of different things depending on the development of the child.
That was my next question. Are there specific subjects included depending on like the grade level of the student and whatnot?
Yes. So like for pre-K, which is preschool, the most important thing is for them to focus on their social, emotional aspects of learning. So when you're pre-K, K first, the only thing that you really truly understand is about yourself. You know you don't know how your mommy's feeling. You don't understand how your dog may feel. You don't understand how this person may feel because your life is circularly around you. Like forever, people was trying to make you happy and trying to make sure that you're fed and this, that, and the other, but they didn't have the words in the beginning. And so in preschool, my biggest focus is making sure that they have the language to be able to communicate. So how can I communicate my feelings? How can I communicate that this is a shape or that this is a letter or number or color? So that's the things that we focus on pre-K, as far as pre-K. When we get to kindergarten, I focus on sounds because parents are very, 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 I don't even know how to stress this. They feel like it's so important for their kids to read. And that is very important. That is very important because reading is what we need to do as when we're adults, right? We need to be able to read and know what we're reading about and how it's going to benefit us. But in kindergarten, the purpose for reading is for us to just be able to understand. So reading isn't just reading words, it's being able to read pictures, it's being able to understand the pictures and understand how it relates back to us, because behavioral in kindergarten is just as important as the academic. And I feel like a lot of people miss out on that because they just want to be like it's so important for my child to read. It is important, but it's also important for them to feel confident in themselves. And so that's why my pre-K through first program really focused on them being a strong person and being able to communicate as a person. And that's communication through writing, through speaking, through reading. And so they are learning through all of that and not just focusing only on the reading aspect. And I know we have math and science, but that's all included in that reading. And that's why they go on field trips, which they absolutely love. Everybody loves field trips, right? And then once we get to that second through third grade, I focus on that reading to understand. So we're reading things to understand. We're learning math to understand how to work in the real world. Everything is real world experiences with me. And so I try to make sure that they are getting as close to that real world as they possibly can. And that's why I always insist on extracurricular activities. Because that's where they're getting their real world every day. So
we talked about time earlier. I do not believe kids should be in school for long hours, 5 days a week. That's just my personal opinion. What are your thoughts on that?
So I agree. So this is how I always explain this thing to parents. When you're at work for 8 hours, right, and you're working for 8 hours, at least 3 of those hours you spend socializing, talking with others, whether it's on a personal level or on a professional level. You spend about 30 minutes social hour eating and again talking. That's all within that 3 hours, right? And then you spend maybe a good 4 hours of really diving in and working on whatever it is that you're working on, because that's the mental capacity of how you could work. It's the same way with children. You cannot expect a pre-K kid to be able to work for 8 hours silently without moving it's just they're not going to be able to do it. So you have to be able to create lessons and create activities that really work for them. So that's what happens at school, but it's not enough because most of the time they have to be quiet. I mean, when they're working, they're not able to socialize with a partner. And when I say socialize, I mean truly socialize. Like, can I talk about this green crayon that's been bugging me all day that the teacher wanted me to color with? Absolutely not. Because if it's time to do math or to work with blocks, they expect you to work with blocks. And then they want you to talk about working with blocks. So maybe I want to talk about the picture I drew earlier. So I said all of that to say, I don't think students should be in school for 8 hours. I can understand why they're there, but there's no way that my pre-K is doing 8 hours of schoolwork. At the most, it's 2 hours of academic working, and then the rest of it is playing because, again, she has to put in place what she learned. She has to put that in place somewhere. And for her, that's that social time. She has to put it in place at that social time. It's the same way when we start going into upper grade levels. So I expect my 5th and 6th graders to work in math for an hour. Well, I expect for them to go out and do some math things for an hour. It may not look like math, but it's math. It may not look like science, but it's science. And it's the same way with history. We teach them these things about history and social studies. And again, I need them to go out with citizenship and practice those things for the other so many hours. And so I don't think that school should be that long, but they try to add other things like art and music. But again, that's that extracurricular activities that we should be giving them anyway outside of school.
Mhm.
So.
You've worked in the public and private sector of education. What are some major differences that you've experienced?
So one thing for sure that I've experienced is that the one thing that's the same across the board, parents are very concerned with their children's education. They want to be there for them. They want to be hands-on. They want to contribute. But it's very different as they get older. So when they're K through third, we're very hands-on. We're helping them with homework. We're making sure they can do. Then once they get in the fourth grade, it's like, okay, I don't know how to do this. I can't do it. I'm not helping you. And so I noticed that trend with both of them. So that's something I've noticed in both places. But the differences between them is that homeschool is more of a personal situation because I can personally strategize how to make sure that your education is 100%, you're reaching your full potential all the time with homeschool versus in a classroom when I have 20 something students and then it's like, I know I have to do so many things, but then you already know that so many of them aren't learning from you because one, you probably don't fit the profile for them. And when I say fit the profile for them, you're not the kind of teacher that they need. And that's hard, especially when you care about everybody, but you're just not the teacher for them. And it's nothing you can do because no matter how much you try to advocate for them to be somewhere else, there's nowhere else for them to go. And so that's the hard part with public school. And then, but again, in homeschool, it's not that way because you cater every single thing to that child. And not only that, but that relationship is already there. And so they receive information from you and they trust you. In public school, it takes time for kids to trust you, especially because they go from teacher to teacher every year and they have to start over. And so that's kind of like something I really don't like. Like I always love to loop with my kids. So if they're in kinder, I'm going with them to first. And then I'm going with them to second if I'm allowed to, because everybody's not allowed to do that. So that's the two differences that I see a lot.
Obviously, a lot of kids do not thrive in public school. So what are some indicators that a parent should enroll their child in a homeschool program?
So if they notice that, well, communication is the first thing, no matter what. If their teachers aren't communicating with them when they see the problem initially, and if they're not being honest, because you can communicate a problem, but then you may leave something out. If they're not being honest about how it's going in the classroom, then your next step is to, reach out to administration, right? Because there's levels to everything. So the one thing that I always suggest is to go through those channels first to try to see how that works. Because homeschooling is, no matter how much I love homeschool isn't for everyone. Like some children actually need the structure of public school. But if your child is a child that's very independent, a child that is self-motivated, a child that can take what it is that you need for them to learn and go through all the hierarchies of knowledge, like I can show you, I can tell you, I can create, I can demonstrate, I can teach it back to you. If your child can do that, I think that homeschool is the perfect place for them because they don't need all of the stuff that comes with all the pressure of public school that comes with public school, because it is a lot of pressure in public school just to make sure that you're meeting markers or indicators that they specifically want, which is a pet peeve. So I don't want to go on that.
No, I do want you to go there. What are some of your pet peeves?
Okay, so my biggest pet peeve is that they believe that all children are the same. All children are not the same. They do not learn the same. They cannot, just because I can pass something today doesn't mean that I will pass it always. Some days we have moments where I need to regroup or relearn something and come back. And so school puts a lot of pressure on students to be perfect. And no one's perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. And they give them this false sensibility of, if you make this, then you mean something to me. So, for example, when I was in public school, they had us have everybody like ID number, because you have to be private with their stuff. But then next to their ID number, they may be green or red or yellow or orange. And the expectation is to be green. Well, what if I can't be green? Then now I have self-doubt. I'm not happy with myself. I have all of these issues because I've been on red this whole time. And so I feel like it plays at your what do you call it? It plays at your work ethic, because I could be working super hard every day, but I'm still red. That does not make me feel good. That would not make anyone feel good, that you're not meeting goals, even though you're working hard every single day. You're doing everything the teacher told you. Okay, so now that I'm doing everything that the teacher told me, is the teacher changing it up for me? Probably not, because it's too many of us, and so they look at that percentage, and that's a pet peeve. So if you have 70% of your kids passing or 85% of your kids passing, okay, but what about the other 30%? And then administration will flip it on you and be like, okay, well, you have 70% passing, that's wonderful, but what are you doing for that 30? Well, I was working on the 70%. Now you want me to work on the 30, so now I'm about to work at the 30. And they do things like that. Like, they trip it up for you, but they don't make plans for those. That's the 30%. They want you to make a plan for the 30% instead of working as a team. And so that's a pet peeve of mine in public school. They don't really work well with teachers. They just give teachers demands, but don't really give them the tools to meet those demands. And so that's kind of a pet peeve of mine. Me personally, when I'm working with my homeschool students, if there is something that they're not successful at, they know, not that they don't know it, but I cheer them on like the biggest cheerleader ever. Like, the moment I see them, even if it's something that I know is hard and they give me that slump, like, oh, I'm like, oh no, don't you worry. We got this. I know you can do it. I've seen you do it one time, and that was enough for me to know that you can do it every time. And that is the thing that they miss at school. Like, they don't get that at school because there's so many of them, and teachers can't really pour all of that energy into 30 students like they can with one.
Yeah, I mean, when we was back in school, it was like 20, almost 30 kids in the classroom. And what else I would like to say is, I saw that not everybody's going to be an A student. Let me just start off saying that. There are people who work really, really hard and then still see students.
Yeah.
So what do you do about those people?
So those students, I always make sure that I am focusing on their strengths. So we can work, like, we work one-on-one on their weaknesses. And I don't like to really call them weaknesses. So let's call them gains, right? Because they have to gain so much for it to be a strength. We work on those gains, and then we also work on those things that they are super, super successful for. So even if they are a C student, I always start with their positives. So whatever they're super good at, I start there. And then that builds that confidence. That makes them feel great about themselves. And then I give them something that they need a gain in. And then once we do that gain, it may drop their confidence a little bit but then we do another activity where I know it's going to shoot up immediately, because it's something that they know how to do and that they're very successful at, and they can be like, okay, that's me, I see me, okay. So I kind of do it in like waves, and it's not to play with their emotions, but the one thing that I tell my parents all the time is that you always deposit into your kids before you withdraw. You know, you give them 2 good things about them before you give them that one thing that may be challenging. And that keeps them motivated every single time to do it when it's challenging. Like, okay, I may have had a hard time with that, but my goodness, she done told me I was really good at 2 other things. I mean, they're not saying that I said that they were good at 2 other things, but they think back to those 2 that they were good at. And they were like, okay, well, if I can make it through those things, then I can make it through this. And so that's something that I tell my parents to do all the time. And again, it goes back to social emotional. And that's something that schools don't focus on. They wait for counselors to focus on social emotional, but social emotional should be in every single class, in every single subject, in every single thing that they do completely, even if it's just walking in the line. You know, are you giving them 2 positives before you give them all a withdrawal? But, you know, that's just me.
I'm thinking back to when we had to walk in lines and all they do was yell at you the whole time.
Yeah, like, oh, you're not quiet. And I'm thinking to myself, they're in life. There's only a few times we're walking in a line, okay? We're in a line at a grocery store to purchase something, or at any store to purchase something, or we're waiting in line to get somewhere. But anytime that we're in a line, we're not quiet. And it's not always straight, okay? But at school, we expect for them to walk on a level 0, no talking to their friends, and the rule is it's that way because there's learning going on everywhere else. But think about it. There's stuff going on everywhere in the world, and nobody's worried about the line.
No.
Unless it's too long and you don't want to be in it and you put all your stuff
there. Right. I don't have time to wait in this line. So let me put everything I didn't wasting my whole hour in this store looking for and put it back. Because the line over the time I was in here.
Yes. And so, and this, I'm going to say something that always used to get me in trouble when I was at brick and mortar, is that when my kids walked in line, we always made it an adventure. Okay. Wherever we were going had to be an adventure. So if we were going to art class, then maybe we're sneaking in the hallway, you know, like tiptoeing. Okay, we're working on our fine motor skills, making sure that our hand-eye coordination, things like that. Or if we're going to lunch, I may walk around with my speaker on, and we're walking around and we're doing some kind of little dance down the hallway. You know, I always try to make sure that my kids were still learning, even when they were just doing simple tasks like walking in the hallway. Sometimes I will say this, that I did make them walk on a level 0 quietly, because I wanted to see if they were able to do my instructions. and that's also learning. So I get that. Like, but when we're at home, it's the same but different. So like we don't have to walk in a line. We can just go from one place to the other. But if we know that our friend or someone is doing something at home that's important, we know that we have to walk by quietly. We still have to respect their space. And so, I mean, I guess it's the same, but I mean, we have it's just a whole different thing at home than when you're at school. I was the rebel teacher, so I'm the rebel at home all the time. Yeah.
Okay, thinking about this makes me think about years ago when you used to work in public school and you like this drill with the like, what's it called? The drill where they have like active school shooter drill.
Okay. Yes.
And I remember years ago you telling us about how you had taught all the kids how to get into the cabinets.
Yes. Okay. So there were places that you wouldn't be able to see the kids. So like there were like long cubby holes, and what I would do is I would put a cover like a tablecloth, you know, the ones you get at the dollar store. I would hot glue those across all the cubbies, right?
Mhm.
And I wouldn't put anything in the cubbies but like these little bins. And so if we ever had an active shooter situation, I would be like, okay, y'all know the first thing we do, we move those bins, we get in the cubbies. We be very quiet, we don't say anything. The cubbies are open, so they're still able to like get out, right? But it was like I made sure that they always had spaces to get in places. And then like, you know, you go to the corners of the room and I would flip the big square rectangle tables over. Like our room was completely empty. Like I would flip the table over and we would like sit behind the tables. And I would treat it like it was an adventure, even though it was super scary.
Mhm.
But the first thing I always told them was whenever we have those, we want to get back home to mommy. You know, like we want to get back home to our moms. We want to get back home to our brothers and sisters. So we have to be super quiet. But that was the reason why I couldn't stay in public school. Because no child should be subjected to fear at school or fear at home. And I know some people's home life are a little bit different, but I know for most children that are homeschooled, their homeschool life isn't like scary or terrible. Most of the time it's a very loving condition. They go and be with loving people and people really care about them. Now there's always that 1%, but even then they still get some relief when they get to go and be by themselves and do school. So like, I don't know. I honestly, that was like my biggest reason for not wanting to go back to the classroom, because I feel like children should be able to learn in a safe environment, and I shouldn't have to worry about active shooter drills or, you know, my teacher yelling at me because I didn't get it, or having to go to the office because I was having a bad day because my mom left to go out of town. There's so many things with public school. Like, people really should know that to go to a public school, you have to think that children have to take their home life with them. And if we're not thinking about that home life when they're there, especially if they have a bad home life, like, how are you making that school life better? And for the most part, from what I've seen, people aren't. And that my heart can't take that.
That's sad.
Yeah, I've seen some stuff in public school that I just don't agree with. But it's no matter if you try to, and I hate to say, like, you know, people be like, oh, you're a snitch. Oh. Not that I'm being a snitch. Children are far more important to me than I think. So I think that that's just, and I'm sorry, I'm going
It's
way,
okay.
but people just don't get that. And it's so hard to get people to understand that if you are really true teachers are there because of the gains and the strengths of kids, not about what you look like to other people. I don't care what I look like. I don't care if my numbers say 30% passing for grade level. Are my kids learning the things that they didn't learn the year before because they didn't understand? That is what is important. Because grade levels are just things to keep us in order for until we get to adulthood. There are adults that went through all the channels that are still on third grade level. Nobody did anything for them. And that's the sad part about it that like super upsets me, but that's a whole nother.
I'm like, I'm trying not to be mean, but I know a lot of people who made it all the way through high school that can't even form sentences right. And I'm like, how? How you even graduate?
Because somewhere someone was tired of dealing and they just kept pushing along. For me, homeschool is definitely not that. So I have a sixth grader. That sixth grader, every single time we move on to a new concept for anything, we start at the base, like the baseline. Okay, you were supposed to know this. Okay, so we go back to third grade because typically that's when they start, they're reading to learn. So we go back to third grade and we go through that stuff and we go all the way to sixth grade. Then we work on all the sixth grade stuff to make sure that we're understanding the sixth grade work. And then I try to go beyond sixth grade. Like, would you be able to understand beyond sixth grade? And so that's how I typically do every grade level. But it's stuff like that. Teachers aren't doing that at school. They're like, they said I needed to do this, so I'm doing this. And I can't speak for all teachers.
Mm-hmm.
I can just speak for those people that I've worked in buildings with. And I've worked in several buildings with 20 plus teachers, and there were amazing teachers in that building that I wish that I could just build a school and take them with me. But then there were teachers that I would definitely tell parents, never let this child buy your child. But you can't say that. It's because you don't know how much, how people feel.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, so you stay busy with everything that you do. How do you make time for yourself?
Never. No, I'm kidding. So being a homeschool teacher, sometimes like I don't typically have to get up as early as other teachers do. So like I try to like make sure that I sleep in a little bit. And even when I am sleeping in, it's not sleep, it's more so I'm just relaxed and calming myself. So in the mornings I do like my affirmations, and I just like with the two deposits and the withdrawals. So like if I'm having a negative thought, I make sure that I give myself two positive thoughts. So I do that every morning. And then I also try to make sure that I'm getting outside. Like, of course, my kids are getting outside because that's part of their homeschool curriculum, but I'm trying to make sure that I'm getting outside to do something that I want to do outside. So even if that means I'm sitting in a lounge chair, reading a book while they're riding their bike, or they're playing lemonade stand or whatever it is, I'm trying to make sure that I can incorporate some things that make me feel good about myself, because I work all day. You know, when you're a homeschool person, you work all day. You're thinking about schooling. When you wake up, you're thinking about schooling. When you're going to sleep, and you're thinking constantly about how to improve what you did the day before. And so that's including yourself. You know, sometimes I may sit and paint my nails because I love to paint my nails. I mean, they're bare right now, but I love painting my nails and I love them colored. So it's just things like that that I do for me.
Typical entrepreneur. You think you're going to become a business owner and work less, but you end up working more. And then a lot of people don't understand that.
Right. Yes, because because not only do I homeschool, I tutor. So like I have to tutor kids who get out of school after 4. So that means that I'm working in the evening times. And tutoring is almost like homeschool. You have to develop things that work for them individually. Like it's not a one person fit all situation with tutoring, just like homeschool. My homeschool students are very successful because that first initial meeting is us. And sometimes I like that first initial meeting is me getting to know them as a person. What do you like? What do you dislike? Oh, what are you reading? What are you not reading? What's your favorite comic book? You know, what are some things that is a pet peeve? And they be like, a pet peeve? What does that, what do you not like? What's the thing that really grinds your gears? Okay. And once we go through that and I let them talk about them and then I talk about me, instantly that next meeting is like they can't wait to see me. And I'm not saying that as a pat on my back. I'm saying that because I want them to be eager to see me. I want them to be eager to spend time with me, because tutoring isn't just learning. Tutoring is learning from someone that you trust. Mm-hmm. And I want you to trust me. I want you to know that I'm going to give you everything it is that you need to be successful. And so again, I have to plan individualized activities for them. I have to think about things for them. So like one of my tutoring students, she likes to be outside. I mean, she's not, she just likes to be outside. I'm not gonna say like she's very like clumsy, but she loves to be outside, right? And I was like, okay, so we're gonna play games outside. We played hopscotch, but not with numbers. We played hopscotch with sight words. And we just like hopscotch, you take the little bing bang and you go into the one that you need to land on. But she had to say every single sight word until she got there. Absolutely loved it. Always wants to play that game. And I'm like, girl, we cannot go outside every day. But it's things to look forward to, you know? And constantly, I take my tutoring kids on my field trips also. So like they constantly look forward to those field trips, because field trips are fun. And it's learning in a different way. It's things that they've already seen. And then I spin it and let them do it in a different way. And they absolutely love it. So, you know, it's stuff like that I love. I can't get over it.
Okay, before we go, what advice would you give someone who was wanting to start a homeschool business similar to yours?
So the first thing that they should do is understand that it's going to take work. You have to plan. And I have to say that because you have to know what is beneficial and what's not. So you have to weed out the good things and the bad things. What what is something that works for you as a person? Know what you can do. Know what you can do, and know what you cannot do. Once you know what you can do, then write those things down. Figure out how it can fit into the homeschool spectrum, because homeschool is not a one size fit all. It's very different from person to person. Once you figure out what your homeschool is like, then start working with kids. I started working with kids for free. Like, it wasn't about the money. It's not about the money for me right now either. It's about what I'm doing. Is it going to work for the child? And so I had to work with children first to see if what I wanted to do was going to work. So I feel like that's the number one thing to do. Plan, figure out what it is that you can do, work with kids in a capacity of what you can do, build a machine. And when I say machine, that's that business that you're talking about. Build that business based on those things. Once you have your specialty, people will come to you, because everybody's going to tell somebody about the good things that's going on there. So you just have to make sure that you find what's special and important to you. And that goes back to your ethics, right? Like, what you value, what kind of person are you in the inside, and what you want people to see from that. So that would be my thing.
Well, thank you so much for coming out and sharing all your stuff.
Yes, I mean, I wish that I could tell you so much more, and people could always reach out to me. I'm also an educational consultant. So if you ever wanted me to just kind of help you get what it is that you want to do with your business, with your homeschool business, and how to have it run, or some materials that are just really like staples for me, then you could always reach out. And my knowledge is, I don't want to say public knowledge. My knowledge, I'm willing to give my knowledge away, because that's how much it is important to me for children to learn. And so I'm here.
Where can our listeners connect with you online?
They could always come to my website, eccentriceducation.org, or they could send me an email at roxanne.leroy@eccentriceducation.org. You can find all of those things on my website. I almost respond immediately because I'm always eager to answer, like even with adults, so you can always reach out, and within 24 hours, you'll get a response. And I hope to help out as much as I can, because I just feel like it's important to help children. And any person wanting to help a child, I'm behind them 100%. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much again for coming out and doing the interview.
No problem. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. Stop playing at life. Let's go. Hey,
you just listened to Melissa with Stop Playing at Life, because you know damn well you need to go out there and have a life.
Right now's the time. Let's go. Hey.